Anthony Picente in studio, and as we said, we'll take some phone calls. Joe in New Hartford with a question for the county executive who announced yesterday he's running for re-election. Joe, you're on the radio.
How you doing, guys?
Good, Joe.
This really isn't a question. I just want to say to Mr. Picente that I think this guy has done a fantastic job, and I'm glad to hear that he's going to run again. I've never been so optimistic in my life about what's happened in Oneida County. I think him, Mr. Palmieri, have all done a great job. And, people complain about politicians, but they don't like to give him credit when they do good things. And I think he deserves how he's kept his county in the black for the years. I have no idea. I just know he's done a great job, and this guy running against him has no chance at all. It's just keep doing the great work you're doing, and please stay in Oneida County and be our executive. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Very nice. Now from one end of the spectrum to the other.
A listener just called to give us a heads up, and I guess this morphed into a question. It says, Tony has a secret plan to put a casino in downtown Utica.
Oh, it's a secret. Well, it got out.
I don't know why. I don't know why you wouldn't announce something like this in like a
First
state
of all,
I will county address.
I will have to say the last time, maybe it was the time before we had you on the radio, you did say that that was a dead issue at this point.
Well, it's dead until and I've had conversations obviously with the mayor and recently with the governor as well. I mean, it's dead until they are willing to sign off.
You still believe in it?
I still think
but there was a lot of resistance.
I still do. There is resistance. I still believe, and I will, and that's the beauty about this job in this country and everything. You can have different opinions.
Right.
I still believe that would be a great catalyst for growth and adding to the downtown entertainment venue. I agree with that because I've seen what has happened in other places, but more importantly, I know what the Oneidas can do, and I know that in terms of what is being done in other parts of the state, that an area such as the development around the Aud could be really explode in terms of having different pieces of that, and we are we have as a state, and it was voted on, and it's in every region, are into casinos as a form of it's not just about entertainment. It's jobs, it's development, it's investment, and it's economic impact. And
it is ironic, though, that those that criticize a deal like what was done up for Nano, which included public money, and by the way, that's not tax money that came out of Oneida County or out of the region. This is New York State.
Sure.
It's
a combination.
But here in the Oneidas, they'd fund that project.
Right,
there would be no need
and then
for
you get revenue, too.
Right,
that's
on
the
top
other
of
thing.
that. So
anyway.
Andrew has a question.
Yes, I have a question from somebody about the possibility of Griffiths being commercial. I know we've addressed this before, but bringing commercial to Griffiths.
We've addressed it before. The market is so hard to break into because of Albany and Syracuse and what's taken place there. We're still a top general aviation airport where our focus has been in that regard and on UAS systems, which are going to grow even more so, I think.
Which could prove to be very lucrative.
Which could prove to be very lucrative. And, as we go to 19 and 20, we're on the cusp of some really big things there in terms of jobs and in terms of research and development. So that's going to be our focus right now. The other point is to get an airline, there's for an airport of our size and our area would require a large subsidy from the county, and I just don't believe that we can handle that at this time.
Interesting too. Ground transportation has over the last 60 years has changed tremendously. We all have parents that would have thought that a trip from Rome to Utica was a big deal, or from the Valley to Utica was you're packing a lunch for that trip. Those days people are commuting from between Syracuse and Utica every day for work. Albany and Utica as well. So it's much more difficult to state the case that they can't drive to Syracuse. It would be convenient. Don't get me wrong.
Oh no, it certainly would be convenient.
And then you got to keep the rates as low and competitive as Syracuse and Albany.
The rates are one thing. The capacity is the other.
Yeah.
There has to be the constant. That's where an airline could probably, without being facetious or whatever, bring an airline in tomorrow with a subsidy. But they would probably give you about 6 months. If those planes aren't full, and I mean full, I mean, they're not going to, in a small airport such as ours, and they say small market, an airport, obviously it's a big runway and all that. In a small airport such as ours, if those planes are not 75 to 100% full, they're just not going. It's just not going to work.
We can't, obviously,
and it's not going to. And they're not going to last. And they're going to pick up and leave.
Well, the problem is that you're seeing these airlines struggle in the big cities.
They are struggling in big cities.
To imagine that, and believe me, we'd all like that to be able to not have to drive to Syracuse. But you wonder, do you have something? Because I got calls now.
The 8.75% sales tax. That's you've been criticized for that. Through your duration in office, and the criticism was actually before you even took that position. Can you justify why it's still at 8.75%, and what would, if you reduced it, what would you have to do?
And an addendum to that question,
yes,
if I could. One of the things you hear people say is, you now have all this money that you're touting from the Oneidas. Shouldn't that have decreased the sales tax? So there you go.
Okay. So the 8 3/4, when I came into office, it was 9. I reduced it to 8 3/4. So I don't get credit for reducing it a quarter point, which I think is significant because a quarter point is a lot of money at that, and especially that was before. It's it's a $7-8 million easily without batting an eye, and that was before we had nation revenue. That I did that, and I had to make appropriate cuts and restrictions and reduce the workforce and other things to get there. So we've done that. The other side of it, we have maintained it at that level for a variety of reasons because of the other 4%. Most of that is that's split and shared between the two cities, within the cities, and then within the towns and villages afterwards. So that 4% is not all ours. Mm-hmm. The 3/4 is because we made, and that was a decision made before I got there, but I supported it and stayed with it. And reduced it because it was offsetting and keeping our property taxes low. We've made that choice to keep the property tax high because of what it generates. And to your point of a quarter point brings $7-8 million. So do the math on that. 3/4 of a point is $21-23 million. Until you can make that up in addition, and with the growth factor that is in all county budgets, it makes it hard. Yeah. And I've kept the tax levy low for the last 6 years at 0. I haven't asked for, before we get into equalization and all the other arguments of tax rates, we have not raised taxes. We have not asked the taxpayers to increase that burden, which is collected by property taxes. We have maintained that at 0 levels, and for the last 5 years. So in doing that, there's a balance there, and that's where we have to look. Now, if we want to cut that 3/4, we got to make up $21 million. And so even subtract the 18, we're still 3 in the hole, but that's already absorbed in the budget and other cost centers and in other areas that state mandates control.
Would completely nullify any gain that you get from having the agreement.
Well, but that $18 million is not reflected in the sales tax. It's reflected in the property tax, because if I don't have that $18 million, then guess where it's got to come? In the property tax. Right. So add that to the property tax levy, and over the last 6 years, people would have saw 7 to 8% increases each year to get to that $18 million.
Now, some have said that their property taxes did go up, which brings us to equalization.
Sure.
So explain that and how that all works for people.
Well, because we talked about this before. If you're a city and you set a tax rate, it's the tax rate period for everybody, and depending on what the assessed value is, that's what it is. When you're a county, you're dealing with 29 jurisdictions because you're dealing with the 26 towns and the 3 cities. And in that regard, your rate is then spread out, because that levy now has to be spread out to all of those areas. Yeah. Some areas have more properties, taxable properties, than others. Utica, for example, is the largest municipality, has the most taxable value. So therefore, there's an equalization rate that's set there by the state of New York to balance, or to level, if you will, what people pay across the board. So that other municipalities, because you're not going to see the same rate per municipality because of their taxable value, and because the assessments are all different in every one of these jurisdictions. Right. So when you get to that, the state designates those rates. We spread out the levy and then the state designates what is spent and what is charged by that rate in each municipality. So yes, the larger municipalities that have more taxable value tend to have a higher equalization rate and have to pay a greater amount per thousand based on those rates because of the level playing field.
All right.
So that's where that.
Anything you follow up on that?
Just to follow up on that, because again, I still don't fully understand this.
Sure.
So, for instance,
it's very hard to explain. It is complicated. So go ahead.
It looks like Florence went down 5%. Deerfield went up almost 4%. There's some variation. Excuse me. Utica was up almost 8%. How does that happen? Based on the information, this chart here that I have, it's a percentage variance from 2018 to 19, or maybe this is 17 to 18. But that kind of a jump where some are going 5%, some are going 8%, others lose 2%, others lose 0.5%. Why such a big jump?
So our tax levy is $66,700,000 and change. So when you break that out, then through the equalization rates and through the breakdown of those municipalities I talked to, each one is appropriated a specific amount in terms of those 26 towns and those cities, the 3 cities. Sure. And so that $66 million is now broken out in terms of what the taxable value is in each of those areas. So in Florence, it may be $800,000. In Utica, it's 15, 16 million or whatever the number is. So clearly you have more properties and more taxes to deal with. And then at the same time each year, if properties come off the tax rolls, if they're vacant for whatever reason, uncollected in that regard, but if those overall properties are no longer there for a variety of reasons or taxable, it then makes a shift throughout the rest of the county. So then everybody picks up in different ways. But if there's more taxable value in the cities or in the certain towns that are growing, and those assessments are higher, that equalization rate's going to go up, and that's where people are going to pay more.
I want to bring George in from Rome. He's been waiting on the lines, 315-736-0186. George, you're on the radio.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I don't usually call into a talk show program. I think it's the second time in my life. But the reason I'm calling, I want to let the public know that about a year ago, we had a problem here in Rome at a local nursing home. We reached out to Mr. Picente, see if he could help us. He came to our meeting that night. We were getting nowhere. Within 48 hours, he had action, and he had things on the right track. He represented those 100-plus people in that nursing home that couldn't even vote for him anymore. And I thought this was a perfect opportunity to let the public know that he did come out for us in the evening. He represented us, and within 48 hours, he had things on the right track. And it gives me a chance to thank him publicly and let the public know when you reach out to him, he responds.
All right, George.
So for that, I thank you very much.
Thank you, George.
Thanks for waiting. He's been on hold for quite a while.
There's a whole other side to this. We can talk about taxes, and obviously, in my financial record, I'm proud of it. I said that yesterday. We have been, surpluses, no deficits, 4 credit rating upgrades, all of the things that we've done. But there's another side. I mean, being county executive, like I said yesterday, is about a lot of things.
Yeah.
It's about doing a lot more than just and we get wrapped up into these large issues, which are important. I mean, no question about it, and significant. But it's what do we do with all this stuff?
Right.
And where does all this go? It goes to the areas of care and concern and for seniors, for youth, for children. There's a lot more to this job than just two aspects of it.
I have about 3.5 minutes.
Sure.
So a little lightning round. Someone asking about salaries. I think Tim Julian brought that up the other day, which I did feel like Tim was running against you more than he was anyone else.
When he does, I'll talk to him.
Increase in salaries.
Sure.
How do you justify increase in salaries?
Well, I justify it that we have we had been in a system that had not been adjusted for years. There were numerous county employees and that were far and beyond what the elected officials were. I don't think that we should be ashamed of of a pay raise, of in terms of our jobs that we do each and every day. I mean, I don't have another business. I mean, the charter requires me to be a full-time county executive, and I am. I don't apologize for the hard work I do. And the committee that was put together, I thought was fair, balanced. It was not decided by us. It was a citizens review committee of some very respectable people in this community and independent, and we would acknowledge it. I don't know how you'd get around that.
I have someone asking on immigrants in this area if the county receives federal money.
Now, we don't receive federal money directly.
But
for
the city of Utica would lose a significant amount if the population dropped below 50,000.
Well, they would. I mean, there's always those triggers in terms of different things on all population levels. But no, we don't receive direct aid for
when you look out at your tenure and what you plan to accomplish if you're elected over the next term. Things that you're proud of, things that you feel you're going to walk away, and people are going to say that was under Picente's watch.
Yeah, I'm proud of the growth. I'm proud of what we've been able to do. I'm proud of the respect that the county has gotten over the years for the stances and the programs we put forward. And we talk about the economic development, the overall landscape, the optimism, the tourist growth, the things that have done. But it's also about public safety. I think we've ensured the public safety more than any other administration. We've fixed infrastructure more than any. We've grown this community, and I think that I'd like to believe that when I leave office, whenever that is, that people will look back and talk about whether it's what was done in the corridor there in Rome at Griffiths, when we were left with nothing in terms of a hospital project and downtown development. I think there's a lot to point to, and I do think that ultimately we'll have the other job growth that we talked about, and that's why I want to continue.
All right. County Executive, we appreciate it. I'm sure we're going to do this a few more times before we get to, at the very least, June. So we thank you for your time. Thanks so much.